So let me ask you this. You being single, I know in the Hispanic culture, at the Hispanic church scene, right? Because I most of the services that I preach in, most of the things that I do is in Spanish circles, and marriage for in that domain seems to be a rite of passage.
Yeah.
It's like once you have crossed that, now you're ready for ministry, right? And there's almost like this expectation of like, we want you to get married. Like when are you going to get married, right?
Yeah.
And many times it could be a source of I don't know, intimidation, distractedness,
Sure.
or even meeting other pastors and other preachers who don't see you at the same caliber because you're single. Have you ever encountered anything like that, whether in congregations, like with the general population, general congregate, or other preachers and pastors? Have you ever experienced that dynamic? And if so, how do you confront that? How do you kind of deal with that?
Sure. We're humans. We're dealing with humanity. There's going to be certain paradigms, mindsets. There's going to be certain expectations, culturally, subculturally within a church, within Pentecost. You mentioned Spanish culture. Then there's these sub church cultures. Every and regionally and obviously in traveling, you you meet a lot. And so I've certainly had my share of those that perhaps had expectations for me, or perhaps could have projected a certain insecurity upon me. I found out early on that I was going to have to own my path, that I was going to have to do what I needed to do. And if I was in alignment, obviously, with the Word of God, with the man of God in my life, my authority, that I was going to have to own my path. When I went to college, when I decided to evangelize, I had friends that went to secular school and didn't go to Bible school. I had friends that went to Bible school, didn't go to secular school. I had friends that went to both. I had friends that went to neither. And I realized all these narratives, all these stories that were unfolding, and yet God was in them. And so I apply that to calling and travel and marriage. I had friends getting married early. I had friends getting married in their mid-20s and early 30s. And I just had to realize, as I looked at my peers, as I looked at myself, I'm going to have to own my path. My story is going to be so different than someone else's, and that's okay. Yeah. We can both. I mean, we're sitting at this table with such a multiplicity of elements in our life that are so different, and yet I think we could all say confidently, I followed the will of God for my life. Right. Morgan has followed the will of God. Chris, yourself, and even having done different things scholastically, even having done different things in perhaps how old you got married and the process and all of it. Right. I really learned that early on. But I would also say I've also been around so many people, and I'm grateful for the people that put trust in me at an early age, that were not intimidated, that did not project insecurities. And, Timothy had a Paul that would look at him and say, hey, don't let anyone despise your youth, and be an example to the believer. Right. I mean, we know Timothy is not an elder at this point. I don't know that Timothy is married at this point. Yeah. But he is told, be an example, not to the new convert, to the believer. Yeah. And don't let anyone despise your youth, which, if not careful, we could use as kind of an arrogant, cocky cop-out. But in reality, what he is saying, live in such a way so no one can despise your youth. Right. So I think if we uphold ourselves with integrity, with maturity and spirituality, we kind of remove the ammo from people to be able to take shots at you and say, man, you're just young and dumb. Right. You're single. And, not a lot of people talk about this, but, there's certain stereotypes you have to run from, because you go to Bible school and there's you've been to Bible school and you know everything. You feel like you are the theological final say for why that person's not having a revival and why that pastor could do it better. Right, the sage. Exactly. And you feel like you're the spiritual expert. And so I had to run from that. I really tried to embrace that humility of, I have so much more of life to live and experience.
Right.
So you have the
think
Bible
that's
college
important.
stereotype.
Right.
You have the PK stereotype.
Okay.
The PK is you're entitled. You've gotten everything your way.
Right.
You've been given it everything. You've never cleaned the toilet in your life. You've never done outreach. And so I had to fight that by by being involved.
Yeah.
And I was the church janitor for quite a few years. I think 5 years. And I worked with several others. And so, I encountered that. I encountered the Bible school, it all stereotype, the PK, you're entitled stereotype. And then being a young evangelist that was single starting out, there was that stereotype that, oh man, you're God's gift to women, and you're the modern day revival.
You still have that stereotype somewhere.
So I had to be. I
don't know if you've broken that one yet.
I don't know if you've broken that one. I could see pastors still lining up.
They're actually out the door behind you right now. The Fangirl Club. So.
I was aware of that,
right?
And so by no means am I the example for how to do ministry as a single young man, but I was aware, and I really tried to be intentional.
Yeah,
I'm not perfect, but I tried to be intentional of being aware of those stereotypes, and not overcompensating, but just being aware and living my life to take away ammo from anyone that would try to project that stereotype. And at the end of the day, yes, people are going to say what they're going to say, but again, like Paul told Timothy, you're going to have to live in such a way to where even if people say things, there's no evidence to it. Yeah. And unfortunately,
it's keeping a good testimony, really, keeping a good name. That's really what that's all about.
Yeah,
right.
So
I've learned sometimes the best ways to respond to an accusation is by not answering at all, and let your actions, because so many people in ministry feel this incessant need to defend themselves.
Yeah, right.
And if you were
I deserve to be here, or this is the price I've paid to be here.
Right. Or if you were to be victim of one of those stereotypes or people to cast that upon you, we'd feel this need to be reactionary.
Sure.
Rather than understanding the nature of people, and oftentimes those stereotypes will just die by themselves. But when you become so intentional about trying to break the stereotype, it ends up coming back to bite you. And one of the old teachers, Josh and Chris, Brother Lashley, I was on the phone with him the other day, and he said something really wise. And he said, we were talking about accusations and people lying on people and things like that. And he said, Morgan, one thing I've learned is that silence isn't always understood. He said, but it can never be misquoted. And
that's
you gotta have some gray hair to say something like that.
It would come from Brother Lashley, man.
Right? And so oftentimes, even if you were to give a right answer, I have been in services. We've been in services where a backslider came in, a bitter backslider who is angry at the church. They come to a service, and then we all will think, wow, there is nothing that happened in that service that they could twist. Everything was untwistable. Yeah. Like everything was quote unquote clean. There's nothing they could leave, post on Instagram, there's nothing. And they will they'll
find a way.
To take something out of context.
If somebody's looking for it, they will always find a way.
And that's the key, Josh. Yeah. And so the idea is, if someone wants to place you into a stereotype or something like you being single, and they just, there's a need in them to belittle you, they're going to find a way to do it. Yeah. And no reaction you can give. And like Landon said, just be yourself. For the listeners, just be yourself and seek to please God. Yeah. And Jesus was called a devil, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think it's all about not being offended when people put you in those boxes. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? If somebody defined you and said, look, this is what I expect you to do, and this is what I expect you to be, this is how I expect you to preach, this is how I expect you to act. I think when we become reactionary, it's because we let it get to us. Sure. We let it get to us. We're afraid of what people are thinking about who we are. Sure. But if God is going to do something great with you, if God is going to do something amazing, something mighty with you, He's going to put you in situations that you're not qualified to be in, and that's the truth. You're not supposed to be there. You didn't pay the price to be there, you know? And it's because God is dragging you along in his will in ways that you cannot expect. You have to learn how to not be offended. You just shrug it off, you know? Just shrug it off. If somebody's talking against or expecting something of you, you know what? And it comes back to a statement you made, and I think it's powerful. Own your calling. Or how did you say that? Something
Own your path.
Own your path. I think that deserves more unpacking. Own your path. Own your story. Own your history. Own who you are, and own where God is taking you. You know, and